Brene Brown has this great clip you can find out there where she says, the opposite of belonging is not being outcast or not being in the group. It's not exclusion. The opposite of belonging is fitting in. I love this from her because she says, right, it's so profound because you realize that when you have that feeling like you truly belong, then you have that space, like we talked about. You have that space to really explore yourself. But if you're working so hard to change who you are to fit into somebody else's life, somebody else's ideas, it is the opposite of belonging because you're not being true. You're not being authentic to yourself. You may go and do great things and make a lot of money, and good for you, but you're not going to have that sense of fulfillment, than somebody who is truly committed to being comfortable in their own skin, which includes being comfortable with discomfort.
Welcome to Unleash Thyself, a podcast where we journey into the depths of personal transformation, spirituality, and growth. I am your host, Constantin Morun, and today we're talking with Marc Scheff, a coach, an artist, an entrepreneur with a fascinating story. Marc has done a lot. He's been in tech, run an art gallery, and even helped start a unique art project. But what really lights him up, like it lights me up, is helping people find their best selves. A couple of years ago, Marc went through a tough time. It was then that he discovered coaching, not just a way to help himself, but as his true passion. Now, he's all about unlocking potential in others, using his own experiences and a deep understanding of what makes us tick. Today, we're diving into Marc's journey, discussing how we can live positively even when life gets complex. We'll talk about the big shifts in Marc's life, from tech to art to coaching, and how curiosity and asking the right questions can help us find our purpose. Marc's story shows us that it's possible to change our paths and make a real difference in our own lives and the lives of others. So join us as we get to learn from Marc's journey in this beautiful conversation. And of course, before we start, I have a small favor to ask. Please subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps us continue to bring these transformative conversations to light. Now let's get started. Welcome, beautiful souls. Marc, such a pleasure to have you with us. How's it going, brother?
It is, as I said, it's net positive.
It's net positive. That's how every day should be, right? Ideally.
Exactly. I think that answer, I think about this a lot actually when I'm talking to people, and everyone wants you to say, oh, good, but what does that really mean? Net positive is like a really authentic way to acknowledge all the complexities that are true in your life. It is net positive. Overall, yes, good. I've had some things happen today that I would not have designed if I had done it myself, but it's net positive.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're alive, it's not positive, I would imagine, for most people anyway, right? So
your mileage may vary, but yes.
That's how it goes. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the show as well, Marc, is because your calling is very similar to mine. The idea of unlocking potential in others, so inspiring and empowering people on this life journey. Have you always felt that was your calling? Because I know, in reading up your story, there seems to be quite a few turns and twists in it, if I may.
Quite a few. Yeah. The sort of 10-second version is, I went to school for computer science, and then I went back to art school, and then I did really kind of like 3 or 4 different things in that world, and did some teaching and ran and I still run a gallery, and then now this shift into coaching. I would say that the thread in all of that is a real commitment to the power of creativity, and I can say more about that later. But the truth is, I think this has always been there for me. I haven't always known that, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I know exactly what you mean, because I've been in the same spot as well. I have a math background, right? And
yeah,
jumped into the entrepreneurial world, but then also did the corporate stuff. And I'm still in the corporate world now, looking at expanding my reach just so I can impact more and more people, right? Through the podcast, through coaching like you and other avenues. And it becomes more and more clear what one's calling is. I call it your why or your purpose once you get
Very same.
very
Yeah.
curious. You get very curious and start asking questions, because often enough, I'm curious to see your take on this, but what I have found is that we are so good at looking externally for everything that we stop asking questions within ourselves, internally to ourselves, which is really where all the answers are anyway.
Yeah, I agree. So much of what you said is actually how I talk about your why, your purpose, the
Mm.
sort of spiritual level of what you're doing
Mhm.
here. And it sounds, I acknowledge that it sounds kind of, woo woo, but the fact is, when I'm working with people, people come to me for all kinds of reasons, but oftentimes there's maybe a specific problem, and that specific problem is often kind of, my life is fine, but is this it? Like,
Yes.
is this all there is? Like, I could do this for the next 30 years, but I just feel like I'd be missing something. So let's figure out what that is. That answer is not out there. It's in here.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Mark, I couldn't agree more. And that's exactly what I'm seeing as well, right? It's like when people get more clarity on the purpose, it's not like the way I say it now, because I work with high performers, right? So we're talking about entrepreneurs, we're talking about executives, anyone that's a high performer. And they have an idea of what they want.
Hmm.
But if you don't get clear on it, it's kind of like, oh, I have an idea what I'm going to have for dinner. And then dinner comes around and you're like, well, I don't know what to eat. So that's kind of how what comes up to mind when we talk about that. I'm curious to see what you've seen.
Well, I mean, that would be that's a great framing for kind of how it all works. I actually, I have somebody new coming on to my client roster, if you will, and they know that their quote unquote dinner is coming kind of at the end of the summer. They're maybe going to switch jobs and give themselves some time off, and they know they don't want to start thinking about what to do then. So
Yes.
that's why that's the work that we're doing now. And it's sort of, it is, honestly, it is a luxury to be able to have that time, those resources to work with someone like you or someone like me on that. But when you do have those things, it really unlocks a much deeper alignment with whatever that thing is. Like, you could imagine, if you're driving down the road of life, right, and you don't think about it in advance, you're just going to grab whatever's there, and whatever's there might not actually be the thing that you want. But if you think about it before you leave and say, you know what, I know that I'm going to be hungry a little bit about there, then you can kind of look on the map and you can say, well, what's going to be there for me at that time? Or what, can I take a little bit of a detour and get the thing that I actually want?
Yeah. And it's funny, you use the word wonder quite a bit. And what comes up for me, because I've navigated my life a lot like that. It's oftentimes you start because you start to have a plan on what you want, and eventually you actually get what you need. And that's where the power
Mm-hmm.
lies. And when I hired my first coaches many moons ago now, as I work with my coaches, it was always because of a want I had. But really, in the end, from the really good mentors and coaches in my life, I got what I needed, which is
Yeah.
very different than what you want very often.
Almost always. Yeah, no, I mean, it's almost a cliche to say, that when people work with me or with you, they get what they need, not what they want. You said something. Can I ask you a question on your
Of always, yeah, absolutely.
when you're working? I have my own, my own ways of doing these things, but I'm very curious. When you're working with these high performers, they obviously have stuff that works, right? Like, they're high performers. They're out there. They're being successful. Maybe they own companies. Maybe they just are a solo, preneur. But how do you lead someone who has a system that works through a conversation or an exploration of their why, of their purpose?
Yeah, I love the question. That's a beautiful question. I mean, I would take it a step back and say, I mean, everyone has a system that works, especially at that level. Like, I consider myself a high performer in the sense that I've been with Microsoft for the last 7 years in a senior role in the sales department, and I enterprise sales specifically. And I've been a high performer and a top performer. And I have my
Hmm.
own systems. They're far from perfect or what they could be had I changed a couple of things earlier. And what I mean by that is that I may be spending too much time. I may be allowing the stress of work to get to me. I might feel overwhelmed. So this was like, I'm looking back now about 2 years ago, two and a
Sure,
half years ago,
sure,
right?
sure.
All these things were happening. So I was successful despite all these challenges that have shown up in life. So it's about bringing, for me, the discussion starts with bringing awareness. Yes, you have a system. Now, you came to me or you found me for a reason. We'll figure out the reason. But first, let's get aware of what are some of the bigger fires, so to speak, in your life. And let's put those out because it's going to have a ripple effect across. I never ever start the conversation with your why and the purpose. That comes after I help them build a solid foundation. And that could be a week, that could be 3 weeks, that could be a month. And then the why conversations get deeper. Now, I've had clients from, for example, from Microsoft that I've worked with that wanted to really get clear on their why, but it might have taken us 5 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on where they were. Because there are so many challenges that we face in life that I see, for example, imposter syndrome, overwhelm, stress, fear of rejection, fear of success, self-doubt, stress. There's a bunch of them that it doesn't matter how clear you get on your why or how much you want something or what mindset you incorporate, those are going to set you back almost every single time. And that's the life I lived, right? Because when I discovered my why 2.5 years ago now, it took me, 7 months to do anything with it? Because my foundation was still not solid, right? So my mindset was not in the right place. None of that was there. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's how it's almost never starts with why. It starts with, well, I have this challenge right now. I'm too busy, right? That's the one reason people come to me. I'm too busy. I'm overwhelmed. I'm stressed. Those are the 3 big things, right? Because if you think about someone that's a high performer, they're working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week.
Sure.
Sacrificing relationships anyway. But I'm curious to see how you do things or how you see it.
Well, just the way you phrased that was funny because, Simon Sinek has that book, Start With Why. And you're saying, don't start with why. You should put out a book. Don't start with why.
That's actually, I didn't think of it. That's awesome.
So there's a few things in there that you said that really resonated with me. I'm thinking about how to relate it to how I work with people. I'm actually in the process of testing out a new course on my community platform about creating space. So what I heard you say, and what's absolutely true, I have a parallel kind of story. When I work with people, I usually typically start with them, with maybe 3 months. In a very rare case, we'll start with like a 6-month program. We just want to sort of see what we can get done in 3 months, get started. And what I find almost always is that about 5 weeks in, we're kind of working through stuff, and then about 5 weeks in, suddenly they realize that they have all this space, and suddenly this deeper conversation starts to happen. They'll notice it too. I had one client who was and continues to be an advisor to the president, Joe Biden. Now, I don't have the experience that she has. I'm not a consultant. I'm not going to tell her how to do her job. But we were doing this coaching work, and we were working through ideas, stuff that she wanted to do, these things. And then and I wasn't really sure. We were working through. 4 weeks in, kind of okay. And then I think on the 5th week, she came in and said, Mark, all those things that I've been trying to do, I did them all this week. What are we going to do next? It was just like a sea change. And I think that the reason that I'm developing this, brief online course about creating space is because that's what it takes.
Yes.
And I'm in the process, I do this frankly all the time. Like I just had a call with one of my coaches, and we decided that I'm going to be doing my space creation work this weekend and this week, so that, not for next week, but for starting in May, I'm going to have the space that I need. I think there's a couple of reasons why this is important. One, you start to lose that feeling of overwhelm because you're planning. I mean, it feels good to kind of know what's coming. So if you're planning your calendar or, what your goals are for the month, whatever that is. The other thing about space, and I think this is just true across the board. If you're looking to, transform who you are or your business or, however you want to look at change, you can't do it if there's no space. But if there is space in your life, in your calendar, in your time, then you can be intentional about what to fill it in, I don't even know how to say that, how to fill that in. Yes. I will say that one of the pitfalls there is that for high performers, especially, we have so many opportunities coming at us, so many things that we're interested in. One of the dangers of creating space is to instantly fill it because there's something right there. But again, it's like driving on the highway. Don't just fill it with the thing that's right there. Think ahead. Okay, when I'm done going through these exercises, creating the space in my life, why am I doing that? What am I doing that for? And for me as as someone who has a strong background in creativity, I'm a big fan of actually filling it with nothing for a while, because you need that space for your default network, your default mode, right brain thinking, to start to put together new ideas. I mean, I'll tell this story in a minute, but I'm curious your thoughts.
Oh, I love that, Mark, and I appreciate you stopping that. I mean, it's so many things come up, and it's like you talk exactly about what I talk about. It's so beautiful that we got to line here, because literally what I talk about is creating time, right? Creating space,
Yes,
creating
yes,
time
yes.
is pretty much the same thing, because all of us are so busy. And like you said, we fill it up. If I have a few hours, I'll go watch Netflix, let's say, as an example, right? Or if I have a few hours, I'll go and work on this project. But it's in doing less that you actually get done more. And that was such a mind shift for me. And it took me a while to get around that, right? And you talked about the importance of realizing that you don't have to fill out that space or that time, whatever you want to call it. What I have done myself, and it's still a work in progress, because the temptation is always big to fill the time up. But two things that come up, and I'm curious to see your take. One is mindfulness. So now I'll take my headphones and my journal and I'll meditate. If I have half an hour between meetings, instead of just randomly browsing Reddit or whatever, I'll go meditate or I'll go journal. That's been immensely beneficial from a creativity point of view, but also from my connection to spirit, right? We talked about that briefly. We'll come back to it. But the second part is, I find that what you just said as well is, when you start helping people create a bit of space and time within those first 5 weeks, guess what? Now they can get even more clear on their why. So that time is going to immediately appear for whatever their why is, because they got more clear on it. So all of a sudden, I mean, as part of my why is to inspire and empower people on their beautiful journey, well, okay, I also need my quiet time so I can find the material to inspire and empower people with, and clear myself up and all that, right? So all of a sudden, all those pieces fit in. So it's beautiful to see how we, different methods, but at the same time, you're getting
Very
to the
aligned.
similar result.
Very aligned.
Love
Yeah.
it, love it. But what's your take? So, because you mentioned that the why piece, they come with the why. Do you start with the why, or do you see it at like the week 5, 6 part?
I mean, so there's lots of different kinds of people in the world, and occasionally, I'll get a client who has already done kind of a lot of this inner work, and they might already actually have a sense of why. In which case, we're maybe going through, sort of kicking the tires on it and saying, oh, do we need to adjust this? Does it need to change? Does it really fit? So there's like a little bit of analysis of like, well, let's look at, like you're talking about all these different areas of your life, how on purpose is the way I think about it. Like, how on purpose are you in these different areas? Okay, so what's one thing that we would need to change in these areas? And it might be that simple, but for most people don't have an idea of what that is. And for some people, just not knowing is enough to kind of get in the way of starting. But that's why no, I don't start and say, well, let's really dig down and figure out what your purpose is, because frankly, I mean, nuts and bolts, like if they're starting with me and we haven't worked together before, it's kind of a big, vulnerable, deep thing to be doing with this new person. So part of the strategy, if you will, of starting to look at all these other areas is because it's just a little bit easier to understand. But and the fact is, the why sometimes comes from that, because once we have an understanding of how the different areas of someone's life fits together, and I have plenty of thoughts on that, then it's really an appropriate time to say, okay, so we've looked at all of these things. Now let's look at these these higher levels. Who do you want to be, and if you're being that person, why is that person here on this earth?
Yeah, I love that 100%. And I kept thinking back to what you said about the start with why with Simon Sinek, because that was a big catalyst for my own journey many moons ago now. And I do talk about it a lot. I never thought of it in the way you mentioned it, because you're absolutely right. The more I think about this now, the way you present it and the way I look at it now, it's definitely, we're not starting with why. That's super important. Most people have a version of that in their mind. What comes to me now is like, start with who. Start with who you are. And start to understand who that person is, because that's going to be your foundation. Right there. There we go, right? It's your thoughts and beliefs about self, others, and the world that shape up your reality, right? So your why doesn't really matter until you get clear on that.
Yes.
That's what happened to me, at least.
Yes. I think that's a very powerful framing. And it's funny that, like I said, people come in. I mentioned before the call this idea of the neurological levels. So
Yes.
I know your podcast has an audience of sort of scientific and spiritual thinkers, and this
Yes.
is a little bit of both, right? So the neurological levels was this concept invented by a guy named Robert Dilts. Sometimes it's called the logical levels. I didn't make it up. It's on the internet. You can look it up. But it's this pyramid of ideas, and there's like 3 lower levels and there's 3 upper levels. So the lower levels are things like, the very lowest levels, like your environment, and that's like your social environment, your physical environment, where you live, the country you live in, whatever. That's your environment, your office. And then right above that, there's things like, what are your behaviors? What are you doing? How are you behaving? What are your habits? Those are actions, right? And those are both things that we can change to affect change in our life. The third lower level is your skills and abilities. We can go learn a new skill and get a new job and get a promotion. We can change our habits and get in shape. We can change our environment and feel much better because it's a clean space now. And that's not going to create the kind of deep and lasting and aligned change that you can have if you go to the upper levels, which is the sense of vision for your life. And this is, I know we start to get to these terms that are sort of vague, but like a sense of vision of your life. And it can be as specific or as general as, I just want to feel a certain way, or I want to actually, I want to have a bigger house, or I want to get out of this job and I want to start a new company. Okay. So tell me about the vision. Tell me about all of the things that are in this vision. And right above that is what you were talking about, this identity level. And who are you going to be being in the future that's going to feel really good? And there's lots of conversational tools that you can use to sort of get people to get themselves out of their present moment and into a more visioning state. And then the place that I love to get to with people is that highest level, which is purpose or spirit.
Yes.
And this is the very sort of nebulous, like, well, what is, and there's so many things out there and so many ways to sort of codify and say, how to put, like, what is the format of a purpose statement? And there's plenty out there, but when you can connect to something in just a couple of words, maybe that's a reminder of a larger idea for yourself, a reminder of who you want to be, a reminder of the world that you are committed to creating, to this vision, suddenly all the skills and behaviors and environment, you can measure that up against that and say, okay, like, I could go learn this skill, but actually for the long game, this purpose game, I'm going to go do this other thing. So you can start to align all of your materials, if you will, your physical materials to align to that deeper purpose when you have that conversation.
Exactly, right? Because it comes down to, I actually did a live workshop last night, my first one, on the topic of creating time through building a solid foundation, then aligning yourself with the why. And you mentioned the vision, which is something we haven't talked about. I also talk about vision, and then your gifts and strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, I had a person ask a question, is like, how can you realize if something is a distraction or not to your life? Like, if they want to go watch Netflix because they want to run away from the stress of their, high performing job, how can they take a step back and ask those questions? And that brought up so much for me, because it is coming down to, is this a distraction towards your why? And your why can be very basic at the beginning. Mine has evolved so much in the last 2.5 years, right? It's still a variation of what I started with, but it evolved because I understand myself better. And the more I understand myself better, the more my why evolves. The more my why evolves, the more I understand myself better. But it's like, to me, it's like, is it a distraction or is it not? And then it's going to become very clear. And it's okay to have occasional distractions, because I'll sometimes go watch TV now for 2 hours and be like, that's time I give to myself or to my partner or whatever. And I'm okay with it. There's no judgment, there's no guilt, no shame. While in the past, those 2 hours would have been 8 hours, and then it would have been 8 hours of feeling terrible, followed by another 16 or 24 hours of feeling terrible for what I did before.
Yeah,
Right?
no, it's a downward spiral once you get into there. Yeah.
Right?
I think the thing that makes me think of is just this idea that first of all, you said earlier about something being far from perfect. Well, there is, first of all, there is no perfect. There's just
Exactly.
there's just what we're doing right now, and that idea, I see it not getting in your way, and I think that idea of really wanting to get just the right thing is part of what stops so many people, because they're like, I don't want to put in all this effort if I'm not going to get it exactly right. But the fact is, we're on a long journey here, and that we're on. I forget the author who wrote this book, called Infinite Games. It was basically he published a lecture that he did, and the idea is like, when we play these games that are kind of infinite games, there isn't an end. Even games that we play over and over again, board games or video games that we sort of, you sort of die and you start over and you try again, but a little better. Like, it's a great analogy. Actually, when I was a kid, I
Yeah.
remember playing that first Mario game, and you get so used to just going, oh, that didn't work, let me try it a different way. Oh, that didn't work, let me try it a different way. That can be how you approach life. Obviously, everybody's situation is different, and if you have whatever degree of privilege, that's more or less available. But I do believe that we all have choices in life as we go along. And the thing that it makes me think of was partially that, but partially I practice jujitsu, and I go basically every day during the week, and sometimes if I can on weekends. I love the activity. I love the way it grounds me. It is kind of my flow state in meditation. It's the way I start every morning. And there's a principle that Henry Gracie, one of the great sort of jujitsu practitioners, he wrote a book about 32 principles, and one of them is this grandmaster principle. And I'm going to butcher whatever the quote is about it, but the idea is, yes, you want to get to that black belt, right? Like, everyone's thinking, oh, you're a black belt, you're done. The truth is, once you get your black belt, you're still progressing. You still get your stripes on your belt. You can progress to other even color belts. The idea is that we are all, the way I think about it is that we are all masters in progress, right? And if we approach everything with that concept of like a beginner's mind, what can I learn from this situation? This is not so beginner, like, be humble, but not too humble. Like, if you're good at something, acknowledge yourself. That's good. If you are a black belt, you don't, stand in that power. But at the same time, don't feel like there's actually an end. And when you really, really get clear that there's no end, I have goals in my life, and I know that when I reach those goals, I will have the vantage point to see the next goals. So I'm just emotionally and mentally prepared for that. And it kind of takes the pressure off, and it makes it easier to start because I know there's no finish.
Yeah, I love that. And the infinite games, I know Simon Sinek talks about that too quite a bit.
He did write another book that expands on the ideas from this initial lecture. Yeah,
that's beautiful. Yeah, no, that's a beautiful take, and I agree with you 100%. That's how I see it as well, because not only can we approach every situation that we go into, regardless of it being like I'm the coach and you're the person I'm coaching, or I'm the mentor, you're the mentee, or whatever the case might be, you can come from a curious place and you will learn and get so much out of it. And I've approached life like that in every situation where I can remind myself to do that. And it's so powerful. And what's beautiful there, Mark, and I'm curious to see your take on this, is that, well, you can do that in everything you do moving forward. But how about looking back at your life? Because we left so many lessons in different challenges and situations that happen in our life that we could easily go back in time through mindfulness, through whatever practice works for you, meditation, for example, or journaling, and start unpacking some of those things and gleaning the lessons from that. For me, that's been such a powerful practice, and it's mind-blowing, to say the least.
Can you say, I'm curious, can you say more about the practice that you go through to sort of mine the gold from your past, if you will?
So I have this one is a newer practice I've done right now. So I'm not sure if, many will necessarily later be able to do it right away. It took me a while. So I'll give you this example, Mark. I like one of the forms of self-care I offer myself is I love to go to Nordic spas. And Nordic spas have hot tubs and saunas and cold plunges, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now, I've always been someone that never, ever enjoyed cold water. I'm talking even on a hot summer day here in Canada. If I go to the lake, I'll be like, nah, it's too cold, right? It's like, I don't know, like still 70, 80, 90 degree weather in the water. And that was too cold for me. And I thought that was normal. I thought that was just me. I saw all my friends and all the people I was with enjoying the water. I'm like, no, I can't. Anyway, I go to the spa, right? And I've been going here on and off for the last 4 years. And in the cold plunge, I see some people go in and they can stay 5 minutes. I see some people go in, put their ankles in and run out. And I was that person too. I would be like, oh, rev up, man up, go up, put my ankle in, up my foot up to my ankle. I'm like, no, it's too cold. Run away. So I'm like, okay, well, I gotta use willpower now because I know the benefits of a cold plunge after the heat of a sauna or a hot tub, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of amazing benefits. For those interested, look them up online. Lots of great benefits. Well, between November and January, I really used willpower, and I could master up to like 30 seconds in the water, but I was miserable the entire time because essentially I was fighting fear with fear. But I was like, oh, you know what? And I was celebrating because it was actually a big achievement for me. Like I went from like 1 second to 30 seconds, so that was great. February comes around and I've been working with some of my own mentors and coaches. And this idea came up of when, and this is not the first time it came up, but it's the first time I wanted to do something with it. The idea that when a fear shows up in your life or a pain, instead of the normal default behavior to run away from it, is to actually get curious and ask questions, but attempting to not come from a place of judgment, guilt, shame, any of that. So on this particular day, this was in February, so not too long ago, I was in the hot tub getting ready for the cold plunge, and it was like 0 degrees outside Fahrenheit, right? So it was really cold. And as I was building up the courage, the fear was starting to take over of like the cold water and the cold weather outside and whatnot. And normally what I would do is I would block that part of my mind or of me, and I would fight through it and then go in the water for 10 seconds and feel good about myself and come back. But on this day, I decided to say, you know what, how about if I meditate and I get curious and start asking questions? And this is where it gets to be a bit more woo-woo in a way. But as soon as I did that, I went into meditation. I started asking a question, what's coming up? And all of a sudden, a vision started to appear. It was a vision of my mother walking with me as a baby in Romania, where I was born, in the mountains. It was springtime. And she was about to go on a boat ride with my father and me as a young baby. But unfortunately, when she took a step on a part of the dock that was rotten, she fell through into the cold water below. And in my vision, what I was seeing is essentially how, she held me up. I didn't necessarily touch the water, but I could feel, literally, I felt the fear in her, and that got transferred over to me. And I got curious. I said, that's interesting. And then I released it. And then I got out of the water, Mark, and I walked over the cold plunge. I didn't feel any fear. I got in. I stayed for 30 seconds. I was like, there's no fear. This is weird. I got out, went back to the hot tub, repeated a couple of times, and I was like, this is interesting. I kind of forget about the experience. A few weeks pass. I talk to my mother and I say, hey, I do remember you telling me a story a while back of an incident similar to the one I just witnessed. Can you describe to me what happened? And she pretty much described the same thing. It's like I was 2 years old, so there's no way I should have a memory of that. And what happened and how she fell in the water, how she was fearful. And since that day, she had fear for water, for cold water, for going on a boat ride, anything to do with a lake. And 2 days later, so that's about a month later after the first time this came up, I went back to the spa. So this is about 2 weeks ago now. Now, my intention was to extend on my goal of 30 seconds to maybe a minute. So I go in there, I start my day with the saunas and whatnot, and it's time for the cold plunge. It's about 25 degrees now out, right? But still fairly cold. I go into the cold water. My fears are not there anymore. I'm like, what's going on? I have no idea what's going on. I cannot explain this. Take more steps in. I get to the water up to my neck. And I'm just saying that, yeah, the water is cold, but there's no fear. There's no discomfort. There's no anything. And I stayed there for 3 minutes, Mark.
Wow.
I got out, went into the hot tub to process what just happened, to meditate. And I'm like, you know what? I bet you if I stay 10 minutes, I can do more. So I got up, I went back. I stayed there for 5 minutes. People were scrambling around me, coming in for a second or two and getting out. And I'm like, I had the biggest grin on my face. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And all that came up to me is like, could it be this easy? All I did was get curious and ask questions instead of running away from the fear. And that's what I mean by lessons in our life, is that we have so much pain that we hold within. We all have trauma of different sizes, and what trauma for you is different for me and vice versa. And we are taught or shown that we need to, keep that on the lockdown and run away from it. And diving into it is what sets you free. That's essentially what I'm coming to realize right now.
Wow. Literally diving into it in your case.
Yeah, in that example, yes.
Wow. Yeah, so you sort of decoded where that fear came from in a way.
Exactly.
You
And
discover, and it's so amazing that you were able to, because so many, we learn our truth about the world so much from the environment where we grow up, whether that's parents or other people, other authority figures. And to be able to speak to a parent about it is actually pretty fascinating.
yes, I mean, I had, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak with her. And if, it's funny enough, even though that amazing thing happened on February 18, I forgot to talk to her about that for 3 weeks after, because of course our busy mind gets in the way. There's other things happening. I was still trying to process what just happened, right? Because going to meditation and having this vision, I'm like, I don't know what's going on, right? Like I'm in my own process of, let's call it spiritual awakening, bridging the science to spirituality and seeing how this goes. But if you take out the spirituality piece of it and look at the science aspect, I mean, look at all the most successful therapists and everything out there. It's all about going inwards, right? And looking at those lessons that were left there from your past. And I've been able to uncover so much that I'm curious. I mean, of course, like you are where you are because of your past, but I'm sure you've been able to look at some of the things you've done in the past and be like, ooh, that was a lesson that I forgot, or I
Mm,
didn't necessarily take the first time. Let me actually learn
mm.
from it now.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. um, well, I like, there's something that you said that kind of helped me clarify this for myself too. And I love therapy. I have a therapist. And this is in no way a dig on therapy, but when people say, okay, so are you a therapist? I say, I'm not. I'm not a therapist. Therapists will often, not all. There's other things, right? But fundamentally, we're sort of looking at things that have happened, and we might talk a little bit about what you want your life to look like, and how we can process the past in order to get there. The kind of coaching, at least that I do, is very focused on, okay, so what are you going to be doing in the future? We look at the past. It's relevant, right? Like it's why you're here, and it's a way of looking at it and going, with now adult eyes, and saying, let me go back to where I learned this truth. Oh, was that it? Huh. Maybe it's
Yes.
maybe it's not true. Maybe I could try dipping a toe or my whole body in the water, in the proverbial water. Um, so I like that framing of kind of like, I talk about mining your past for gold, because there's all these lessons in there.
Yes.
And there's probably more than we could ever really process in our lifetime. But it also speaks to another idea that I've been writing about and thinking about a lot, is this concept of tragic optimism. Like we said at the very beginning, how are you? It's not good. It's net positive, and net positive is like a tragic optimist way of saying how their life is, because it acknowledges all of the discomfort, pain, dumb decisions you've made, crappy things you've done, things you feel maybe some shame or guilt about. Hopefully not shame. That's a very strong one. Maybe stuff that you've cleaned up, maybe you haven't. But we're all complex people. We've got lives behind us. But the optimism is that I can, okay, this is just my past. I cannot do a thing about it. But what I can do is see if there's a lesson there for me. So part of my journey to really commit to coaching and to working with people who want to create change in the world, it is through tragedy. I mean, there's a number of ways of kind of looking at it. I don't know if I would call it a total tragedy, but one was COVID. One was
Yes.
that happening, and I had just done a huge show in Miami with a gallery that I work with in Denver, and things were looking to be kind of like on that trajectory. And then COVID hit. So kind of everything shut down. We didn't really know what to do. I have 2 kids at home. We're just scrambling to just keep them on their Zoom school or whatever they wanted to call it. And it was very, very, very hard. But it
Yeah.
was in the middle of that time. So the art career kind of went, for a minute, because I didn't have time. I didn't have time. We were exhausted. Everyone's sort of scared about what's going on. We don't know. And then I actually had an opportunity to create. I pitched and got funding for an artist residency program in upstate New York, and I was the executive director of this program, and we were working along. And without getting too into the gory details, it didn't work out. My relationship with the staff just completely deteriorated. And honestly, I got really depressed.
Yeah.
I was like not getting out of bed for better part of a month, and I'd cook dinner for my family and put it on the table and go upstairs and lie down again. Like I was really, really not feeling good about myself. And I say all that because there's, again, it's this tragic optimism. My wife at some point, when I was a little bit kind of out of it and I started to get back in the studio, she stopped me and said, you know, it's fine if you want to go back to what you were doing, but it's also fine if you want to take some time. And like we said right at the beginning of this conversation, if you want to take some time and really, really think about, she didn't use the word purpose, but that's how I took it. It's like, well, let me think about, because I have a sense of what that is for me. I've been working with that concept for the last 20 years. And so I sat down and did an exercise that I kind of designed for myself and was like, okay, so what does somebody with this purpose do in this moment with this, these are the things that have happened to them. These are the experiences I've had, and there was a lot in that experience, that failed experience. There was a lot in that experience that was extremely helpful for me to know about how I want to communicate with people, how I want to be even more authentic about who I am and even more upfront and clear about who I am and what my boundaries are, how, what I expect and what I expect of me, that I think has absolutely, I mean, I almost say it's like the worst ex-girlfriend I ever had was the best relationship I ever had. This was the worst ex-girlfriend in terms of a career. And it was it was so many powerful lessons. There was so much knowledge there. And it's frankly, it's one of the things that allows me to be a powerful coach. So that concept of mining the past for gold, or, acknowledging the past and saying, like you said, curiosity is such a big part of it. Really looking back and going, now, at the time it was very painful. And frankly, it was painful for a long time, even as I dug myself out of it. But now when I look back, it feels like a painful time. And I kind of keep going back and going, oh, that incident, in the hallway that was really terrible. Like, what would I suggest to somebody if I was coaching this person, this leader of this organization? What would I suggest to them now? And I can come up with answers. And frankly, I'm like, well, that feels good. I wish I had done it then. But now I'm like, wow, I guess I do have some knowledge here. It's great to be able to take those lessons and actually put them into action.
Wow, powerful and inspiring story there, Mark. I love everything you said about that. And of course, I can acknowledge how tough it was, because you and I have a very similar story. I went through a very dark period of my life for different reasons, but very similar to what you've done. And one of the exercises that pulled me out of it, and now I do it pretty much all my clients and they all love it. And it's a powerful one. It kind of exactly what you're doing here, but I look at it this way. And it touches into the net positivity and the tragic optimist. It's that most of us run our life thinking that things happen to us. Why did this terrible situation happen to you? Why did this terrible situation happen to me? Like, for example, I had food poisoning for the last few days. I was mentioning to you offline, right? Why is this terrible thing happening to me, right? And that's fine. That's, I would imagine, human nature for most of us. But then you have an opportunity to ask a different question. How is this happening for me?
Mm-hmm.
And when you reframe that question, and the way I do it myself, now I do it in my mind, I sometimes do it in my journal, but if you're starting out, I always tell people, take a piece of paper, put a line down the middle, take a small challenge you had, how it's happening to you, how it's happening for you. And now you have a choice. What do you want to focus on? Because the for you are always the lessons, always the benefits in it for you. That's empowering, right? Because that means that everything that happens in your life has something for you in it. So if you focus on that, you're going to get more of that. If you focus on how it's happening to you, it's not fair, whatever, you fill in the blanks, that's what's going to show up more and more, because that's what your focus is. At least that's what I've seen. And that's in your story, the way you shared that and the way you talk about the net positivity and tragic optimism. I mean, yeah, I had food poisoning for 3 days, but I still got a lot of stuff done. And I can look at it as a positive thing because I've got to learn a lot. Guess what? I meditated more than I've done in the last month because I was bedridden and stuff, right? Like, there's always positive things that happen, but I guess we are not trained. I shouldn't say trained, but we're not shown how to look for the positives in our life as much as we are to look for the negatives.
I mean, that's 100% on all that. I have so many stories that relate to that. Just we're often faced with these tough decisions, especially, again, going back to what you said. If you're a high performer, one of the traps that I see high performers get into, myself included, is, is this kind of idea of saying yes to so many things. And, one of the good outcomes, or how is this happening for me? When I'm not going to say burnout is a great place to be, because actually burnout is not a
Oh
great
yeah.
place to be. But as you move into a state of overwhelm, that's it's not where I get everybody. It's not where everybody comes to me in a state of overwhelm. But overwhelm is like it's like the check engine light on burnout. Starting to feel, I've started to be able to really notice, like, I'm not overwhelmed in my life right now, but I can see that if I don't really sit down and do some planning this weekend, that's going to happen at the end of April. Because I've been through this cycle, and I'm paying attention, and I'm noticing, and I'm working with coaches. So we're looking at this stuff all the time. And it's actually kind of a wonderful feeling to know that that's a check engine light. Oh, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do the exercise that you gave. I thought was quite powerful. I do various kinds of audits, energy audit, calendar audit, these things that really help me. Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, there was a project that I've really been interested in being a part of for, the last 2 years. And I was offered a place, and I actually even started it. And I realized that I was hitting that overwhelm point. I was really hitting it. And I had a very difficult conversation with the person who's running the program, saying I wasn't going to be able to participate. First of all, he's one of my coaches. He was one of the most gracious people in the world about it. And that's what you get when you work with people who are really doing this thinking, because he also had the same inquiry. How is this happening for me? What is this? Mark's not going to be a part of it. So how is this happening for me? What is the thing that this is opening up, as opposed to what's shutting down?
Yes.
This is interesting. This is a conversation I had with a client recently, and it was kind of all about language too.
Oh yeah.
Here's a high performer, a very creative person doing lots of different things, different programs, different projects of their own. And when we were sort of talking about the fact that suddenly there really is too much. Like, now we have a schedule where really it cannot all get done. The rubber has now met the road. What are you going to do? You got to let go of something. And the conversation started with, kind of, it sounded like positives, because they were sort of describing, well, this is really good because this is really good because this is really good because this. But when we shifted the mindset, or the framing, or the perspective on that, it was like, well, those are all good things, but you're talking about all the things that you're losing. And it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
What if we talked about all the things that you could have if you let go? Everything changed. This decision that was taking like weeks happened in the matter, of a few days. So
Well, yeah, language is so powerful, so powerful.
Yeah, language really is. And when you start to, I mean, it's one of the easiest things to notice, when you're talking to somebody. But it was so funny to sort of hear all this positive language and go, wait a minute. So why is this hard? Because you're talking about loss. You're talking about giving up these things. Now let's talk about those things are gone. What do you have now? What can you create now? And when we had that conversation, man, things just opened up. Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. Because what came up as you were sharing that, I was wondering if you went down the path of also looking at, are they actually good for them in relation to what they want to accomplish, right? Because we often, and I say this because I caught myself in the spot many times in the past. I'll say, well, I'm doing this activity, it must be good, because it is a good activity. Let's say, playing a sport or being signed up on a project. But the question we don't ask is actually good for us in this moment of our life.
Absolutely.
Is it good for our future self, if you want to go down, if you want a future pace this for yourself?
Yeah.
And when you ask that question, a lot of things will not check those boxes anymore.
Yeah, and it's just an interesting way to flip the conversation when you're, even just people who are listening, like for yourself, whether you want to work with a coach or not, you can ask this question if you're having this kind of like, I've got everything going on all cylinders, and it's starting to feel like overwhelm. It's just an interesting exercise. You can sit down and think about, okay, so I'm going to give up this project. What could I create now? What can I create with that space? You don't have to then go quit that project. It's just an exploration. And that's what I love about this work, is that we can really explore and say, right here, magic box, nothing's going to get out of here. What if you gave up all of those projects? What would you do? What if you gave up half of them? And you can really start to explore and imagine. This is where creativity is so important.
Yes,
in
I
these
love that.
conversations. Yeah.
Right? And it's not like what I loved, what came up for me, as you said, that like as you think about, okay, let's consider giving up on this project. It's not necessarily about giving up. But what if you reduce the investment you put into it in the time? Because usually we equal busyness with productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get distracted and we don't realize that we spent 8 hours on something that should maybe only take 2 hours, maybe 1 hour, but you spent 8 hours because of all the distractions and whatnot. So really you rob yourself of, let's say, 6 hours. So it's like, okay, well, I don't want to quit on that project, but I'm going to time bound it. Maybe I'm going to put some constraints around it. All of a sudden I'm freeing up time for other things and I still get the stuff I want to get done. It's powerful once you.
Yeah. There's a framework that I like. I don't know. I think I made it up. I don't think I read it anywhere. So if someone finds this somewhere else, please let me know. But when you're going through your sort of energy audit, right? You're sort of like, okay, these are all the things that I'm committed to: projects, my family, my wife, my kids, my cooking, my creativity, my coaching, all of this stuff. You list all that out and you put it in. Which of these feel like they give me energy, and which feel like they drain me of energy when I'm done. And people are a fun one to play with, because sometimes you realize that there are people who really drain your energy.
Oh, yeah.
But when you go through that list, the point is not necessarily just to have things that fuel you. The point is to have some sense of balance. But sometimes it's hard. It's like, well, it's not a binary choice. Like, do it or don't do it. The way I think about it is kind of like 3Ds. You go through that list and they go in one of three columns. Do, keep doing it. It's good. Delegate, and that's kind of like what you said, or maybe diminish a little bit. Delegate, like, okay, this
Yeah,
needs to get done. Maybe I can do it in a different way. And delegation is just one way to get those things done. Diminishing your effort on the project is another way. And I think that that's a powerful framing. And then the last one, of course, is just ditch. It doesn't fit in my life anymore. Whether it's a person or an activity. Yeah.
that's powerful.
Do delegate, ditch.
Do delegate each. I love that. I love that. I have seen a similar system, let's say, as I'm testing different things out myself, but I love that because really, and you know what's funny about what you just said? Not funny, I mean, it's great how to see the synchronicities here, because it's still all about getting curious, right? Because getting curious about how your time is spent, how your energy, how your focus is being put. Until you start asking those questions, nothing else matters anyway, because one of the areas I'm certified in professionally is organizational change management. And they have some really robust frameworks there. I mean, they incorporate changes at organizations with 50 to 100,000 people working. So it's all about people change. First step is always awareness. And that's the same with any human change on a personal level that we embark on. If you're not aware of something, you cannot change or do anything about it. So that's why getting curious and, like you said there, do that audit. Find out. I know it can be daunting. I know that much, because it can be scary to look inwards. But once you do, oh boy,
It is, but again, I just want to remind anybody listening, you can do these exercises and you can do nothing afterwards. Like, you can change. It's okay. Like, it's just an exploration. The scary thing is, and it's true, once you start to see some of the things, you can't unsee them. Once you start to look at, and I will say that people is one of the hardest ones, because if you do this
yes.
audit and you do it with people and you go and you look at, and you're like, wow, that is not serving. I had someone who didn't end up signing on with me. We did a coaching session, but I had her do this exercise, and she wrote me a couple weeks later and said, it's taken me this long to do the exercise because I kind of had a feeling like my whole friend group is not serving me. I have this great, very comfortable friend group. We spend a lot of time together, but I'm growing and I want to do X, Y, and Z big things in the world. And they're great people, but they're not aligned with me. And I need to look at that. And so that, I get it. That one should be scared of potentially that outcome, because it is true. Once you see it, it's like you can't really not see it.
Absolutely, Mark. I know. I mean, wow, I can't believe we've talked for almost an hour now.
I know.
It's time flies when you're having fun. Let me ask you this before I let you go. What else comes up for you to share with us that maybe we haven't touched upon that you feel is important in the moment for someone to hear?
That's a great question. I might need to take a second on that one.
Absolutely.
Um, something that's been coming up for me a lot lately is this idea, and I've been working with this concept actually for the last few years on my own, but this idea of a feeling of belonging. And Brene Brown has this great, clip you can find out there where she says, the opposite of belonging is not being outcast or not being in the group. It's not exclusion. The opposite of belonging is fitting in. I love this from her because she says, right, it's so profound because you realize that when you have that feeling like you truly belong, then you have that space, like we talked about. You have that space to really explore yourself. But if you're working so hard to change who you are to fit into somebody else's life, somebody else's ideas, you don't, it is the opposite of belonging because you're not being true. You're not being authentic to yourself. You may go and do great things and make a lot of money, and good for you, but you're not going to have that sense of fulfillment, than somebody who is truly committed to being comfortable in their own skin, which includes being comfortable with discomfort.
Wow. I love that so much, Mark. And you spoke to myself from like a few years back. That's what I was, right? Fitting in, not belonging. And now it's quite the opposite. It's such a beautiful one. Wow. Powerful stuff, Mark. I want to thank you for your time. And I cannot wait for us to have another conversation here soon.
Wonderful. I have had such a great time on this podcast. I feel like we probably have another like 4 hours of stuff to talk about, but I'm excited to have you on mine and we can continue the conversation.
Absolutely.